So it's currently 33 degrees in the UK, and I'm talking about a movie where people get burned alive. So quite fitting, really. We finally have another Evil Dead movie, Evil Dead Burn, the sequel to 2023's Evil Dead Rise, and I have not been the biggest fan of the most recent Evil Dead films. I think the first two are classics. Army of Darkness is good, but I still have a lot of issues with it. The remake, I could not remember a single scene in that movie, and I know Rise has its fans, but I really did not like that one. And the reason why I don't like these most recent films is because they don't understand the tone of Evil Dead. Army of Darkness is directed by Sam Raimi. You'd think he understand the tone, but that one's way too comedic. And then we get to the remake and Rise, and they're trying way too hard to be scary. So I expected Evil Dead Burn to fall into the same ballpark, trying to be way too scary. But I'm so happy to say that this was a massive surprise. I thought Evil Dead Burn was the best movie in the franchise since Army of Darkness. This movie gets it. It fully understands what Evil Dead is all about. And what's very strange is that it feels like a French extremity movie, which is quite obvious because it's directed by a French director. He's obviously taking a lot of inspiration from that genre. And if his previous film is anything to go by, he really, really loves it as well. This movie is violent, and I mean violent. If you thought Evil Dead Rise was violent, get ready for this movie because, wow, there was moments where I had to look away, mainly because there's one moment where if you don't like dogs getting hurt in movies, then beware this one. And there's other moments as well that just had me cringing and near enough looking away, especially one moment with an ear. And I'm not going to get into spoilers about it, but I have a weird thing when it comes to blood and gore with ears and eyes. I just cannot deal with them. And one with an ear was really, really horrible. So if you want blood and gore, then this movie is going to be right up your alley. But what I think really works about this film is the characters. This movie explores disorganized families and how there's a lot of conflict between them. It also explores abusive relationships, which right off the back, this could have easily gone really, really wrong. You're talking about a really serious issue with a movie that has a lot of comedy in it. You could really mess up the tone. But thankfully, I don't think this movie does that whatsoever. We follow the main character, Alice, who's been married into this family, and her husband is unfortunately very abusive. And the family either doesn't want to believe her, or they just don't really care. And so they begin to resent her even more. You need to take this stuff very, very seriously. There are people out there who are going to be affected by this deeply. But I think this movie works because the comedy doesn't really affect the central conflict. It kind of surrounds it in a sense. And I think the film does a really good job at tying in the Deadites to this central conflict, as well as the family conflict as well. I really just like that these people have to deal with some family members getting possessed by these Deadites, obviously, maybe having to kill them and listen to them saying some really, really heinous things. So you can only imagine how these people are feeling and what they're thinking. And it leads them to do some really, really dark stuff. We deconstruct these characters and we see them at their lowest points, their darkest points, and you really do feel for all of them. You especially really like Alice. You really want her to prevail. And I have to say, I really loved her ending. Of course, there are some satisfying moments, but there's also not a proper sense of closure to her arc at the end, and I thought that was really, really effective. And in the grand scheme of things, I do think it does make sense. Surprisingly, the real horror of this movie has got nothing to do with the Deadites. It's mainly to do with the family as a whole. Even before anyone gets possessed, the tensest scene in this movie is where they're sitting around a table having dinner. They're just bickering with each other, and there's something happening that none of them can see, and you're just waiting for this moment to happen, but you just don't know when it's coming, and it just brings you to the edge of your seat. And I do think the film does a brilliant job at balancing the comedic moments and the frightening moments. There is some really, really good comedy here. I thought the Deadites especially were really, really funny. We all know they're unapologetically evil. They just laugh in people's faces while they're getting mauled to death. And those were some of the funniest parts of this movie, surprisingly. There's moments with a grandma that were especially very, very funny. And not ready to spoil, but there is a post-credit scene. There's two post-credit scenes, by the way. The last one, very, very important. But one of them's just a quick joke. But even that had me laughing, and it's really, really dark. And another thing that surprised me is that this film does what many sequels fail to do, and that's make itself stand out. Yes, there are callbacks to previous films, and I don't mind callbacks. I don't mind nostalgia bait, as long as you do it right. And I think this film does it really well because it's putting its own spin on it. And I also appreciate that it's expanding the lore of Evil Dead as well. We get introduced to new concepts, new societies as well. Not really going to delve into that because that might be explained in the next Evil Dead movie in a couple of years. However, I did feel this movie failed to stretch away from the Evil Dead formula because, especially in the last 10 minutes, it ends with the cliche big CGI battle that we see many times before. And I understand why it's there, and it does give some good closure to a character, but it's also very, very generic. And quite frankly, the CGI looked terrible. It looked really cheap, and that's probably because of the really low budget, but it also felt so disconnected from the rest of the movie. But what this movie did not fail in was how it was directed. It felt like Sam Raimi directed this movie, whilst also putting its own spin on it. There are some shots here that I really, really liked. There's one with a mirror, which was so good. It reminded me of the film Contact. You know that iconic scene where the daughter opens the mirror? It really reminded me of that. It was just really, really good. And the way that they moved the camera to show that a dead eye is hanging off the ceiling or something. They do that in one scene where someone's getting strangled and suffocated. Those moments were just really, really effective. And I also thought the acting was really, really strong too. And I apologize for how I'm going to pronounce some of these names, but Souheila Yacoub, I believe that's how you say it. She was great. She plays the main character, Alice. She was really, really strong, gave a really great emotional performance, and I really, really love that she's very, very vulnerable in this movie. You'd think in the third act she'd become more of a badass, and while she does, obviously, there's still some very much needed vulnerability to her character. We also have Tandi, Wright, who plays the mother in Pearl, one of my favourite horror movies of all time. She plays another despicable mother in this movie. Just keep giving her these types of roles. She's really good at playing really, really awful mothers. Hunter Doohan and Luciane Buchanan, believe that's how you say it. Those two were great in this movie too. Everyone was great in this movie. They all gave really, really strong, emotional, very dramatic, and very, very funny performances as well. So overall, I thought Evil Dead Burn was a fantastic entry into this franchise, and that's because it's not afraid to be an Evil Dead movie. It's scary, it's funny, it's not afraid to be both of them at times, and that's what makes Evil Dead so popular. The character work was really strong, it was funny, it was scary, it was directed brilliantly, the acting was really strong. Yes, it kind of limps in the last 10 minutes, but as a whole, I thought it was really, really strong, and I am way more excited for the next Evil Dead movie now. So I'm going to give Evil Dead Burn an 8 out of 10. Groovy. And there we go, people. That is the end of this review. If you have seen Evil Dead Burn, do let me know your thoughts on it. Did you like it? Did you not? Let me know. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, people. Have a good day, and see you later.